Hello again. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy over here for EliTheComputerGuy.com and EverymanIT.com. Today's class is Digital Surveillance System Administration. So at this point, we've had an introduction to digital surveillance systems. We've talked about analog surveillance cameras. We've talked about IP surveillance cameras. We've talked about a lot of things. So now we are going to talk about how you administer the systems themselves. So all these cameras, whether through a coax cable or whether through IP over Ethernet, will all go back and communicate with a main central server. So if you're dealing with the analog world, analog cameras, you will be dealing with a DVR or digital video recorder. If you're dealing with IP cameras, you will be dealing with something called an NVR or a network video recorder. If you're dealing with both analog and IP cameras, you will be dealing with something called a hybrid system. So hybrid systems are systems that allow you to put in analog cameras and IP cameras. Today I'm going to show you how the administration works using a pretty standard analog DVR system. So I'm going to show you using something called GeoVision. So GeoVision is one of the manufacturers of these surveillance systems. It's a good standard manufacturer. I like it. It's easy to use. They always work. They're one of those great companies. So what I'm going to show you today, as with all things in the computer world, whatever vendor you go with, they will be a little bit different. The odd thing, especially with the analog cameras in the DVR or digital video recorder world, is that the systems are 95% the same, down to how they look. So when you look at a GeoVision system or a Kodacom system or a Pico system or an AverMedia system, when you're interacting with it, it looks the same. AverMedia basically looks like a GeoVision. They're 95% identical. So if you understand how to work on a GeoVision system, you probably can figure out how to work on an AverMedia system. The issue is that final 5% difference. So as I talk about in all these classes, you should find one vendor for your products and stick with that vendor. Not because one vendor is better than another, but because all vendors have quirks. So, when I was installing surveillance systems, I installed GeoVision systems. Why? Because I knew GeoVision inside and out. Not just when I was installing it. You go out to a site and something doesn't work right, so you know how to hack it, you know how to fix it, but also selling it to the clients. Remember, all these systems have slightly different functionality, so if one of your clients really requires one specific thing, GeoVision might do it, AverMedia might not at all. So if you end up, trying to save $50 by building an AverMedia system, you may find out that, well, it doesn't do what needs to be done, and you've lost a lot of money. So this class today is Digital Surveillance System Administration. I'm going to talk about the different things you have to understand about these digital surveillance systems when you're going to administer them, and then I'll have a demo where I show you how all of this actually works. So with that, give me a second and we'll dive into this class. The first thing that we're going to talk about is buying or building your own video recorder. So you can buy pre-built digital video recorders or network video recorders, or you can build your own. It's very important, either way you go, that you make sure that you buy the right system. Again, for all these systems, they're 95% the same, they're 5% different. That 5% can mean the world, so make sure you do your research when you're going to buy or build your system. As we've talked about in other classes, the first thing that you have to be concerned about is the frames per second, or FPS, of the video recorder. This is both for live view, so when you're viewing the video feeds live, and for recorded view, when you're watching the recorded videos later. Sometimes the frame rate per second for live view is much higher than the frame rate per second for when you're watching recorded video. The next thing you have to make sure is what is the quality that the video recorder is going to record the video in. One of the issues that you can get into if you try to buy inexpensive video recorders is you can buy very high-end cameras that actually have a very high quality of video, but the video recorder itself is not able to record at video of that high resolution. So especially as they're coming out with higher and higher quality analog cameras, a lot of the old video recorders simply cannot record at the video quality of these cameras. So that's something you have to be careful of. When you're going to buy these systems, don't do bargain basement, eBay, budget, whatever. Make sure you buy legitimate digital video recorders, software, etc. I've dealt with this in the past. I had a partner who tried to always buy everything cheaply. And the thing is, if you go on to eBay, you can buy a lot of knockoff equipment. So Kodacom is a really high quality vendor of video recording PCI cards, digital video systems. You know, to buy one of their cards will cost you $1,000 or $1,500. Well, there's a lot of companies, especially out of China, that will sell you something that looks like a Kodacom system for $150. The problem is, having dealt with these cards in the past, is one, you have no support because it's a pirated piece of garbage, and two, you can have a lot of problems with these cards. You know, recording doesn't happen how it's supposed to, the software doesn't work right, etc. So just stay legitimate. Stay with GeoVision, AverMedia, Kodacom, Pico 2000 I think is one. There's a lot of different vendors out there. Make sure that you're using a high quality vendor. Nuvoco if you're going to be using DVR appliances. Whatever you pick, make sure to stay with the same vendor. Again, GeoVision or AverMedia, etc. This is very important. I see a lot of new people, and when they start installing surveillance systems, every single job they go to, they install a different vendor surveillance system. This causes all kinds of problems at the end of the day. If you go out and you buy a pre-built system, or if you buy an appliance video recorder, well, it's pretty simple. You just sign a check or give them the credit card number and you get the system in the mail. It's already set up, it's already working, etc. You can build your own video recorders if you want to. So when I was doing this, I would build my own computers and then put the PCI card in to turn them into the digital video recorders. This is a very good option, and depending on where you are in business, can be a good thing for you. You don't even have to simply build your own computers. You can go to some place like Best Buy, buy one of their desktop computers off the shelf, plug in a PCI card, and create your digital video recorder that way. Almost all of this software runs on any Windows operating system. So the computer I'm going to show you in the demonstration is actually a Windows XP Home machine. So it's XP Home, XP Pro, Vista, 7, Server, etc. But you don't need to spend a lot of money on the operating system. If you have an extra XP CD with the license key laying around, you can use that and do a full-fledged DVR. I did it a lot. It's not going to matter. The operating system is not that relevant for this software. The one thing that I will warn you as of March 15th, 2012, is a lot of times the PCI cards, the device drivers, do not play nicely with 64-bit operating systems. So even now, we're talking 2012. We're not talking 2010. We're not talking 2008. 2012, when everybody's going to 64-bit, one of the problems you can have is the device drivers for these PCI cards don't work with 64-bit operating systems. So this is one of the things that you're going to have to do your research on. Make sure the DVR PCI card that you buy works with a 64-bit operating system if you have it. So if you buy a DVR card that requires a 32-bit operating system, might be a little bit difficult to find. You can't just go to Best Buy anymore or Walmart to buy 32-bit operating systems. You might have to special order that from Dell, etc. If you decide to build your DVR, it's really simple. I'm not even going to do a class on it because it's so simple. Essentially, you take your PC, your stock standard PC, right? You slot in a PCI card. So if you see this PCI card, with however many ports you want on it, And then you install the software. So if you're going to do an analog video recorder, a DVR, you install the PCI card, then you install the software that they give you with the PCI card, and then you plug in the cameras and do some configurations. That's all you need to do to create a digital video recorder. If you're doing an NVR, a network video recorder, it's even simpler. You don't install a PCI card because there's no PCI card to install. You simply install the software on the operating system and then start configuring. That is how easy it is to create these digital video recorders. A lot of people think it's really complicated, like there's Active Directory and all that stuff. No. You install a PCI card and then you install the software. Or you just install the software. It's really that simple. So that's all you really have to understand for building or buying the DVR or an NVR, these video recorders. The main thing that will just beat into your head is make sure all the specifications line up. Stupid little things. Like I told you, the device drivers for those PCI cards, for these DVRs, many times don't work with 64-bit operating systems. Think about that. I mean, that's a bugger. 2012, we're still having this kind of problem. So those are kind of the little things, little quirks that you can run into, and you have to make sure that you cover your bases and you understand what you're buying before you buy it, or you can be out a lot of money. This little card in here, my cost for a 4-channel card was about $300. When you go up to the 16-channel card with GeoVision, with all the bells and whistles, you're literally looking at $1,400 your cost for the card. I'm not saying for the computer, I'm not saying for the DVR, I'm saying for the card itself. So that's one of the reasons with these specifications, you have to be very, very careful what you buy. Again, one 16-channel card, $1,400 your cost, what comes out of your pocket. That can be kind of expensive. The most important lesson that I'm going to teach today is for you to make sure you know what the client wants. Especially with selling digital video recorders, these surveillance systems, remember that clients have a magical way of thinking about these systems. They think that you can install some $1,000 system, have 50 cameras attached to it, and it's all going to be high definition video that anybody in the world can see. That's not how it is. When you sit down, not just to sell, but to also install these video recorders, you have to make sure the client understands what you're selling, and you have to make sure what you're telling the client is in fact true. Again, as I was just talking about with these surveillance systems, they're 95% the same. 95% Kodacom, AverMedia, GeoVision, etc. are the same. 5% is different, but that can be a huge 5%. If your client needs a very specific thing, AverMedia may be able to do it and GeoVision may not. Kodacom may be able to do it and AverMedia cannot. I can't tell you what it is. These systems do a lot of different things, but you have to make sure that the system that you're selling them will do exactly what it is they need done. The next thing when you're dealing with these clients is you have to make sure that you configure the system, again, to do exactly what they need. Some clients need video where they need to be able to see everybody's faces perfectly, but they don't need a lot of recording time. So they may say, I need very high quality video, but I only need to save that video for 2 days. So you can set up the video, make sure that all the settings are on the highest quality, and you're not going to have to worry about the hard drive running out of space. A big problem though is some clients need the video kept for an extraordinary amount of time. And when you say there's going to be a 1 terabyte hard drive or a 2 terabyte hard drive in their DVR, their video recorder, they may think that means more than it does. I had one client who had a warehouse that when we were trying to come up to terms on the video recorder, the one thing that he waved off was that he said he needed the recordings kept for 6 months. The reason is his warehouse, they packed goods, things like cars, big items, and shipped them on ships overseas. So we said sometimes, you put a car in good condition, and months later, it comes out of the shipping container in Hong Kong and it's all banged up. So he wanted to be able to prove that when it left his warehouse, it looked to be in good shape. When I had told him that it was going to have a 1 terabyte hard drive in his video recorder, he was like, oh, of course it'll last 6 months. And then I looked at him and I realized he thought that, and then I laughed, and then we explained how everything worked, and he realized it wasn't going to do that. Well, this was very good because he realized this before the system was installed. So this was a 16 camera system. This was very, very good money. This was very, very high profit. But if I had allowed him to think it was going to continue recording video or keep video for 6 months, that could have killed the deal after everything was installed, which could be a really bad thing. So the big thing with these systems is they're very easy to use, but you have to make sure that you know what the client wants. And I mean, you just got it. You've got to make sure they're not doing magical thinking, and you have to make sure you're not overselling. Because remember, hardware intensive, this stuff is expensive. If the client thinks you sold them something that it's not, I mean, you can lose a lot of money really quick. So that's one of the big things, is make sure you and the client are on the same page. So the main thing you want a digital video recorder for, or a network video recorder for, is generally to record video in case something happens. So, if you get robbed, somebody steals something, etc. So there's a few things that you do have to understand about recording with these video recorders to make sure you don't run into problems later. Again, with all computer systems, it's all about, is the checkbox checked or is it not? If it is, then the computer will do whatever you tell it to do, and if the checkbox isn't checked, it won't. That is a big problem with these video recorders. If you're going to be having the video recorder, remember the video recorders serve 2 functions: to monitor what's going on in real time and to record what's going on to be viewed later. Well, a lot of these systems make it way too easy to shut off all recording. So when you're dealing with video recorders, it's called monitoring. So if you think of recording in the video recording jargon, that's called monitoring. And so it is very easy to shut all monitoring off and then forget to turn it back on again. So if you looked at the video recorder, you would see, everything that's going on real time, and you wouldn't think anything about it, and you'd leave. And then when something happens, you go back to look at the video and you'd find out you forgot to restart the monitoring. So this is a very big thing. So when you're setting up your video recorder, make sure that it is set up to record. A lot of these systems are not set up to record by default, and that can cause a lot of problems. The next thing you have to think about when you're going to be administering your video recorder is, when will the video recorder record video? So basically you have 2 ways. It can either record video all the time, or it can record video only when there is motion. Now, you may think if you record video all the time, that would be a really good thing, because then you know that you're not going to miss anything if anything does happen. The issue is that with motion recording, since it will only record when something happens in front of the camera, when you go back and look at the log files, it's a lot easier to figure out when something happened. So if somebody burglarizes your building, they are going to burglarize your building between 1 in the morning and 5 in the morning, let's say. Well, if you've been recording video constantly from 1 to 5, then you have to slowly go through and click and try to figure out when your building was burglarized, and then try to find a picture of the person's face or what happened. Well, if you're doing motion recording, it will only record when there's motion on the screen, so you can go back and you can look at the log files and you can see, oh, at 2:05 somebody ran across the video. And it's much easier to see what's going on. Again, one of those rookie mistakes is trying to record video all the time. It makes a complete nightmare if you have to go back and look at the recorded video, because again, if you have a large gap of time between, let's say, 1 to 4 or 5 in the morning, that means you have to look through all that video feed to try to figure out what happened. If you've done the motion recording, you can just see, when the video recorder started recording stuff, click right there, and then you can see exactly what happened. One of the nice things with the motion recording is you can do something called masks. So what masks is you have your camera and it's viewing an area like this. So let's say, it's the front of your building, so there's a door here, there's a window here, and there's a desk here. Now, when you're recording video, you may only want to record when somebody walks through the door. So as we've talked about, you can set up motion recording, where it will record if there's any motion anywhere on the screen. You can also, with these systems, set up a mask. That mask will say, if there is motion only in this area, then do the recording. So if somebody walks in the door, it'll record. If somebody walks out of the door, it will record. But if something happens over here, it will not record. This, depending on how useful it is to you, is again what your client needs. Whenever you're setting up these systems and installing these systems, you have to make sure you understand what your client's requirements are. But this can be a very useful thing. If the client only wants to see who comes in and out of their building, then you can do a mask and it will only record when somebody goes in or out that door. One of the things with the log software, when you go back and view the video, is you should find a company that has created good log software. So log software is anytime you go back to watch recorded video. They call it video logs. Not recorded video, it's almost always going to be video logs. I have seen some of the companies, their video log interface is horrible. It is evil. It is nasty. It's just, oh my God, you would not want to wish it on the guy who just burglarized you. I mean, it's so bad. That's one of the reasons why I use GeoVision. That's one of the primary reasons I use GeoVision. Not only is it a good quality product, but the log system is very, very simple to use. It's very easy, as I'll show you in the demonstration. You can just go in, you can click when a motion happened, you can look at all the videos and do what you want. It's that simple. Some of the log files for these different video recorders can be absolutely horrible. Once you've found whenever the incident happened, so when you were burglarized or such, the nice part with these video recorders is you can export those files. So again, with good video recording software or systems, you can export those files to a file type that anybody can use. So with GeoVision, you can export the video to an AVI file. You can export a snapshot of an image to a BMP file. So, if somebody burglarizes your building, you can simply export the video to an AVI file, put that in a thumb drive, and you can hand that to a police. This can be very, very useful. Some of the video recording software, and this is what you have to be careful about, is it will only export to a proprietary format. So in order for the police to view the video, or your buddy to view the video, or anybody to view the video, the person has to have the company's, the vendor's video viewer. This can cause real problems, obviously, because again, if you can just hand a thumb drive to a police officer, that makes their life a whole lot easier than having to hand them a thumb drive and some installation CDs and a little book on what happens if the installation fails, etc. But these are the basic things that you have to understand for recording. Remember, monitoring means actually doing the recording. With these systems, it's way too easy to turn all the monitoring off. So whenever you leave the system, make sure that it is monitoring all your cameras. If it's not monitoring, then it's not recording anything. The next thing is when you set up the cameras so that they record only when there is motion. This isn't just to save space on the hard drive, it's also to make it easier to go back and see what happened when. Again, if it happened between 1 and 3, you don't want to have to sit there for 2 hours looking through all the video to try to find out what happened. Then I showed you the masks, so you can put a mask over an area so you can say, I only want to record video if motion happens in this one specific area. Again, a door. If somebody comes through a door, I want to record it. Otherwise, I don't care. Then the log software, so this is when you go back to view the video feed. You're going to be using video log software. All you do is you go back, you see what you want to look at. Different companies make this easier or harder. make sure to go with the easier one, and then you can export again to AVI, BMP, etc. So these are important things you have to worry about when you're dealing with the recording function of these video recorders. The next functionality with the other functionality that's very important for these video recorders is the ability to remotely view a property. So this is the ability to set up a surveillance system at one location and be able to view it from another location. You're able to do this with most of these video recorders a number of different ways. The first way that you can view your system from somewhere else is simply through a web browser. So most of these systems now, if you use just a normal web browser, you go to the IP address of the video recorder, you will be able to view what's going on and also many times be able to view recorded video. What's important with this is that when you start doing this, you have to understand a little bit of networking. So if you're going to allow this to happen, you have to understand port forwarding. So if somebody wants to be able to view their premises and they're somewhere else out in the world, you have to turn on port forwarding in the router and make sure the ports are forwarded to the DVR, the digital video recorder. You have to make sure the firewall is open and basically that the overall system works okay, that they have a decent internet connection, etc. The next thing with the web browsers that you have to be careful about if you use them is many times the vendors that build these surveillance systems, they build extra functionality for Internet Explorer. So Internet Explorer, it has the ability to use something called ActiveX controls. It is the only web browser that is able to use ActiveX controls. Well, a lot of the functionality that the vendors build in when you try to remotely view one of their video recorders uses these ActiveX controls. So for the most part, if you're going to have clients try to view a digital video recorder remotely, they'll need to be using Internet Explorer. It's not as bad as it used to be. It used to be back in the day, if you had a Mac and you wanted to look at your video recorder, there was just nothing you could do. Nowadays it's not that bad. You can normally use Safari or Chrome or Firefox. Just realize you may not have the same functionality when you do. With the GeoVision system that I use, you can use Chrome, Google Chrome, to be able to view most of what's going on with the surveillance system, but you're not able to see everything that's going on with the system. All the functionality is allowed through using the ActiveX controls with Internet Explorer. Beyond the web browser is the most basic way you can view one of these systems remotely. They can also allow you to have remote software that you can install on your PC or your iPad or your iPhone. This is software, installed software that then connects to the video recorder. The important thing with this, why it's nice, is it allows you more functionality than what you get out of the standard web browser. So the web browser, when you look at the video recorder, you're going to be able to see the live view stuff. You're going to be able to do a few things. You're not going to be able to do a lot. If you install this software for remote viewing, most of the time you get all the functionality of the video recorder from wherever you're at. So if you're in Italy and you have a warehouse in Baltimore, you can sit in Italy and you can do whatever you want to that video recorder. The next thing that they have are something called command center software. So when you're dealing with large environments, large businesses, so let's say you're dealing with a business that has 10 warehouses throughout an area, and you have one security officer that has to look at all those 10 warehouses. Well, what can happen is with the command center software, all those DVRs out in the world, with all the cameras connected to them, they can all talk back to this one command center. So especially when you're dealing with analog cameras, usually these systems will only support 16 cameras, and some cases they'll only support 32. So they can go all the way up to 32 cameras. But let's say you need 64 cameras, or 200 cameras, or 500 cameras. What you would do is you would have multiple video recorders, and then they would record the video and then send information back to the command center. So this command center software could then be connected to, I don't know, like 5 50-inch monitors, and then you could view all those 200 feeds. So this is another way that you can do the remote viewing. All these video recorders send the information remotely back to the one command center. It aggregates that, and then you can sit at that command center and look at all the 200 feeds. So, you know, this monitor can be Albuquerque, and this monitor can be Washington, D.C., and this monitor can be Boise, Idaho. But basically, one person sitting in a command center can be able to view everything that way. Again, with all this, it goes back to what I was saying before. What does the client need? You know, sometimes they only need a web browser, sometimes they need the remote software, sometimes they need the full-fledged command center. The really nice part with the remote monitoring is you don't have to be outside the building in order to need to use remote monitoring. So wherever you set up the digital video recorder, it really should be in something like a server room. It should be locked up somewhere, you know, in a corner of the building that nobody's going to go to. Well, video recorders, these surveillance systems, are used many times, again, just to track what employees are doing or to see what's going on in a warehouse environment. So you can use remote software, and the warehouse manager can sit back in his office, you know, pull up the web browser and see all 16 cameras and see what's going on. So when you're thinking about this remote software, remember, it doesn't have to be, you know, you don't have to be in Italy looking at a warehouse in Baltimore. You could be in a single office in Baltimore looking at all 16 cameras that are spread out in the warehouse that you're in. This is something to think about. Again, if you're going to be looking at this video from the outside world, you have to understand port forwarding and firewalls, make sure everything's open, and then you have to make sure that you have enough bandwidth. If you're going to be viewing your site from another location, you know, DSL probably isn't going to cut it. DSL is pretty slow nowadays. You want a good 2 megabit per second upload speed to make sure that when you're streaming all that video up, it's not bogging down the entire internet connection. I've seen this, again, in the real world. It's horrible and it's nasty. But basically, I've seen where the boss, you know, logs into the video recorder. So the boss is sitting at home. They connect to the video recorder to see what their employees are doing. And then, ironically, as soon as they do that, all that streaming video bogs down the internet connection, and then their employees aren't able to work. That's kind of ironic, isn't it? But that's one of the things that you have to think about with this remote monitoring. The final thing I want to talk about before we get into the demonstration is I want to talk about the basic usage and maintenance of these video recorders. Especially if you're doing PC-based video recorders, you can run into a couple of problems and it can be really bad. The first thing is, although you can install one of these video recorders on an XP Home machine or a Windows 7 machine, etc., these video recorders are still servers and should only ever be used as servers. So if you set up a video recorder, its only job ever in life is to be a video recorder. I've seen a lot of damage done. I've gotten paid a lot of good money because employers don't manage their employees well, and then their employees go onto the digital video recorder and they start navigating around and looking at porn sites and gambling sites, etc., and they end up getting their video recorder bogged down with spyware and viruses, etc. Remember, this is a Windows computer. If you go to a porn site, it can get a virus just like any other computer. So when you install this video recorder for either yourself or your client, make sure they understand this is a server. You don't browse the internet with it. You don't create Word documents with it. You don't do anything with it. It is just a video recorder. As I talked about before, especially with the monitoring and recording, it is very easy to accidentally shut off all of the recording. You don't want some dumb 18-year-old employee, you know, messing around with your video recorder, accidentally turn off all the monitoring, and then have something happen, and then you don't have any footage of it. So remember, it's It's a real Windows computer, but it should only ever be used as a server. Along those lines, make sure to install antivirus software, and if you're really going to lock it down, make sure to install or have your firewall configured properly. Again, it sends me up the wall because I've actually dealt with like the distributor type vendors, and a lot of distributors don't believe you need to put antivirus software on the DVRs. And I think they're morons, like almost to the point of being grossly negligent morons. You can get a virus. Your computer can get a virus simply by being connected to the network. So if it has a network cable plugged into it, and that's plugged into a router, and there's any other computers plugged into that router, it can get a virus. You don't need to use Internet Explorer and go to a website. You don't have to go to a porn site. You don't have to go to a gambling site. Simply by plugging this computer into the network, you can get a virus. It's true. Again, I know a lot of the distributors. Distributors that I've talked to, these are sending out hundreds of millions of dollars equipment a year. And I've gotten into arguments with them about this. And they're morons. It really is. So whatever you do, make sure you put antivirus and security software onto your digital video recorder. Now there are a lot of free options. Microsoft Security Essentials is free for commercial use. So at the very least, put Microsoft Security Essentials onto your DVR and make sure it runs a full scan every once in a while. Again, a lot of people don't think these things get viruses. I don't know why. You can get a virus simply by plugging your computer into the network. I've had this happen, so make sure, like I said, you put the security software on there. So the big thing with the usage and maintenance of DVRs is you only use them as servers. So they are servers, they do video recording, that's all they do. Install antivirus software. If you really want to get into it, install the firewall software, make sure all the firewall stuff is logged down. But treat the system with respect, and it'll make everybody's life easier. So, I have this system here actually set up upstairs, with little cameras and just doing recording and all that. So I want to take you upstairs to my office to show you how all of this works. So I'll show you how the software works. I did kind of have to jury rig it, use my video camera in order to record the demonstration. The reason being, using Camtasia Studio or any of the screen capture software, it just made a mess of the video feeds. So it'll be a little more difficult to view than normal, but I think I got a pretty good shot. So basically I'm going to take this camera, I'm just going to set it right in front of the monitor, then I'll take you through all the different functionalities of a GeoVision digital video recorder. And that I'm going to show you, how the live feed works, how the recording works, even how some of the remote viewing works. So let's go upstairs with all this, and I'll show you how all of this works on a real live system. So here we are at a Windows XP home computer. So this is a normal Windows XP home computer that I turned into the DVR, the digital surveillance system. So I can go down and I can maximize the DVR software, and now we see the digital video recording software. I have two cameras plugged in to this particular server. So I have one low quality camera here on the left hand side and one higher quality camera here on the right hand side. These are only analog cameras today. Basically these systems, whether they're DVRs or NVRs, network video recorders, all work basically the same way. So what you see here basically works in the NVR world. You just have to plug in IP addresses. To show you the different qualities of camera for when you're dealing with analog cameras, over here on the left hand side, this is like a $20, $30 camera, and you can see how bad the quality is. If I increase the size here, you can see this is a normal, relatively sunny day in a pretty normal environment, and you might be able to tell that I'm a white guy. Think about this. Over here is my computer. I have a computer here. I have stuff on the screen. This is a cup. Can you even tell that this right here is a cup? And you look at my face, and you can barely make out what my face looks like. The big thing to realize here about the quality of cameras is I am sitting only about 6 feet away from these cameras. So these cameras are sitting on a desk that's just like right there. It's 6 feet away from me. So from 6 feet, this is the quality of the video image. I guess you could give it to the cops. And like I say, I might be a white guy or a Mexican. I mean, really, it's that bad. So if I go to the second camera, you can see that it's a much better quality. So the first camera was an inexpensive $20, $30 320 TVL camera. This is a 500 TVL camera, probably set you back $200, $250. Now, it's at the exact same place, so from 6 feet away, you know, you can see, hey, I'm a white guy, I have a brown beard. You can even see the logo on my shirt. So this is something that's useful. You can even see like the computer screen. You can see that I have something on the wall. Again, not the highest quality. This is not a megapixel camera, but this is something that you can do something with. As I've told you guys before, one of the biggest problems when you sell surveillance systems is everybody thinks these systems work too darn well. They don't. Most of these systems are pretty crappy. So I'm showing you, this is the image, this is the real live viewing on a real live system, and this is the quality you get. So when you're dealing with these systems, the first screen that's always going to come up is going to be this type of panel. It's always going to show you your video feeds. So whether you have 4 cameras or 16 cameras, you can go down and you can select how many cameras you want to see. So down here on this bar, we can do 1 camera, we can do 4 cameras, or we can do 16 cameras. Obviously, I don't have 16 cameras installed in the system, but if I did, all 16 of those video feeds would show up here. Over on the right-hand side, there's almost always going to be a date, there's almost always going to be a time, and it's almost always going to tell you how much hard drive space you have for recording videos. So you may not see this now, but this says 358 gigs of space. So this just gives you an idea. Do you have a terabyte of storage capacity? What do you have? Down along the side here tells you the server services that are running for the server. So TCP, multicast, and web server. These server services are whether you can access this server from the outside world. So can you view video using a web browser? That's what the web server is for. Can you view video using an installed application on your iPhone or your iPad or another computer? That's what the TCP for. MCAST is for multicast. Multicast means can multiple people view the video at the same time. So the MCAST server is on. So this is the initial screen that you're always going to get, whether you use GeoVision, whether you use AverMedia, Kodacom, Pico, just about everything. It all basically looks like this. Maybe slightly different, but it's all, like I say, all this software is 95% the same. It's the 5% that's different that can really cause you a problem. Now, when you go down, you'll have some buttons down here. Again, you'll have these configuration buttons on every piece of surveillance software you're going to deal with. The big button that's the most important is this one right here. Unfortunately, you can't see it very well. This is the monitoring button. This is whether this system is recording or not. So if you accidentally turn off all the recording for your surveillance system, you may not realize it. So you can live view the video, but it's not necessarily recording. So right now, because I was playing with this system before, all the monitoring, all the recording is off. So although you see me here, you see me, waving, this isn't being recorded. So if somebody walked in with a gun and shot me right now, there'd be no video recording of it. If somebody was watching it, they would see it, but 5 hours later, if somebody came back, it wouldn't be recorded. So you have to make sure you go down, and especially with these analog systems, there will be a button or an option that says Start All Monitoring. So you'll start all monitoring. That means all your video cameras are recording. Then you can go over and you're going to have configurations. So there you have system configuration, you have camera audio configuration, password setup, all kinds of fancy neat stuff you can do in here. We're going to go into right now the system configuration. What you'll notice, and this is a problem with the system configuration, is in order to configure the system, you have to stop all monitoring, which is stop all recording. So if you need to change a configuration, it is way too easy to forget. to turn the recording back on. So make sure you turn recording on whenever you're going to be, after you finish doing configurations. So I hit OK, and the monitoring is off. Now your basic system configurations come up. So startup, what this means is when the computer starts up, what do you want to have happen? Basically, we want the computer to turn on and we want to monitor all. We want to record all the video feeds coming in. What servers do we want to have start? Do we want to have the multicast server, the TCP/IP server, the webcam server, etc.? Do we want these types of server services to start? Remember, this is a computer. This is literally a Windows XP home computer, so it can be hacked just like any other personal computer can be hacked. So if you're not planning to view your system remotely, you don't want to turn these servers on, because you are turning on web services. You are opening up ports, and again, in the security world, the more you open up, the worse it is. Then you just have a lot of just general configurations you can change, like the panel resolution. So you can say how big a screen is plugged into your DVR. So 1920 by 1200, 1024 by 768, etc. What is the DVR's name? Then here we have video log storage. So this is where you can set the location for where your video is going to be stored on this system. So you can install multiple hard drives, but then after you install the multiple hard drives, you actually have to go in and set a location to tell it to record to those hard drives or to those folders. So you can click on this little folder button here, and basically it's a general browse. You just browse to where you want to record the video to and hit OK. There's no more difficult than that. You can add multiple hard drives here, so you can have C and D and E and F and H, and then it will just fill up those hard drives as it goes. Then down here you can say how many days do you want to keep the video. Depending on what kind of business you're running, you may only want to keep the video for a week or for a month. Remember, things like video recording can cut both ways. They can help try to protect you and help you sue or punish somebody that wrongs you, but it can also be used in court against you if something doesn't necessarily, go how you think it's supposed to. Anybody who runs a business knows that there's mistakes. And basically, if you video record and you have those mistakes video recorded sitting on a surveillance system somewhere, that can be subpoenaed and taken to court to get you sued. So you spent $15,000 installing a surveillance system, and then you get sued because you did. That can be bad. So that's one of the things you can do with this: how many days of video do you want to keep? If you only want to keep a week's worth of video, you just click on this and you put in 7 days, and then it will only keep a week's worth of video. It'll delete after that. Caption ID, exit option. This is also an interesting one. What exit option means is when you exit out of this software, what is the computer going to do? The normal exit that you want to have is you want it to auto restart Windows. Again, you only want to use this server for one thing, and that's for surveillance systems. You don't want to use it for Internet Explorer. You don't want to use it to write Word documents. You don't want to put QuickBooks on here. The only thing that this server should be used for is for the surveillance system. So I would say for exit option, you always put auto restart Windows. PTZ control. If you want pain, this PTZ, pan tilt zoom, is so horrible for analog cameras. I'm not even doing a class on it. So if you want to learn how to do PTZ, you can check this checkbox and you can figure out all this mess. It is just horrible and evil. I would say that you should stay away from it. But the big thing to remember is that you do, if you are going to use a PTZ camera, you have to go in here and configure it, how it's going to talk to the camera, etc. Monitoring options, event log size, digital watermark, all this kind of interesting stuff. And so this is for the system itself. Generally, this is one of the most important configuration screens on here. The next screen you'll go to is for the individual cameras. So this is for camera 1 and this is for camera 2. So how do you want these individual cameras to react? You can do things like, you can change things like brightness, if it's in a really bright area, contrast, and this is on a per camera, so I'm only doing this to this one single camera. Then we can say the recording quality. How high a quality do I want for recording this video? if this video is simply looking out over a huge parking lot and all I want to see is if a blob comes in and if a blob goes out, or if a car comes in or a car goes out, I could use a very low recording quality, maybe 1. If I need to do things like try to capture faces so I can use it in court later, I may put it up at a recording quality of high. Frame rate per second, high or low. Then you come down here and you do motion detect. So the sensitivity for when this video camera is going to start recording when it sees motion. So maybe you're in an area that has a lot of chipmunks, or maybe you have a lot of like debris that blows across the field of vision for the camera. That may trigger the camera to record all the time, so you may take the motion sensitivity and make it lower so that it only records big objects like people walking by or cars. Or, on the other hand, if you're in an area where there isn't debris going by and chipmunks and squirrels, you may want to put the motion sensitivity to high to make sure you capture absolutely everything that happens. So, you know, in those little James Bond movies, when the remote control car zips by the video camera, maybe you want to, you know, record the remote control car zipping by. The interesting thing you can do here with this motion detection is you can also do this mask. What the mask does is it allows you to say what area on the video you want the motion sensitivity to work on. So maybe you have a big area like this and then you have a door. And so you only want the camera to record when somebody comes through the door. So if this is the door, you know, right here, basically we'll say where the window is. If that's the door, you only want to record when people come through the door, not when somebody's walking over here to the right. Well, you can use this mask to say, I only want to record anything that happens in this one little area. So when motion happens in this one little area, then it will record. Otherwise, it won't. Okay, X out of there. Then you have, you know, record video. You can do motion detect. You can do round the clock. You can do day or night. Again, I would say motion detect after doing this a long time, because then you know where to go in the video. If you record around the clock, it is just horrible and evil. This thing, you can set alarms to happen, you can invoke alerts, they have output modules, all kinds of other different cool stuff. The same goes with camera 2, the same configurations. You can put input-output devices onto this DVR, this video recorder. So there are options such as if you want to be able to record the transactions that are going on at a cash register and have that show up directly on the video feed. That can be connected to this DVR. This is where you would set all the configurations. Then hotline network, you can have this DVR, if it has a modem built in, you can have it text message out when alerts happen. You can have it call and give a pre-recorded message. You can send information out on emails, etc. So these are all the configurations that you can go into with this video recorder. Again, this is not simple, or it's not difficult, it's rather simple. You simply have to make sure you configure everything properly. Make sure you configure it for motion recording, make sure your filters and masks and all that are set up right. If you do that, you just plug this thing in and it works forever. So now that you understand how to do the recording, let's go over and look at the log files themselves. So I can go down here, and this gives me the option for the log files. So when you're looking for video, this is a log file, so don't get confused. They never say recording. They always say like video audio log file, and that's where we're going to go to. So the big thing, again, the reason that I like GeoVision is that the video recording, going back and looking at recorded video, is relatively easy. Some of these systems can just be a nightmare. Now up here in the right hand corner, you'll almost always get the option for how many cameras you want to look at any one time. So right now you see that there's only one camera. If I click on quad view, you can now see that I have 2 cameras that I can see the recorded video on. Now what I can do is I can go back, so today's March 15th, I can go back to March 14th, and then let's say I want to see what I was doing at 16:55, 4:55 on March 14th. I can just click that, I can hit the play button, and now it shows what's going on. So there was just a little screen flicker there. Let's see, I can go back to 1602, so 402, and play. And so this is when I was configuring this DVR. So you can see me, I didn't have my shirt on, I'm just playing around. Up on this other camera, you can see that I'm messing with the focus. So that's how easy it is to view the recorded video. Again, GeoVision is really nice. It just makes life really, really easy. Then I can go and I stop this. And to show you what these cameras look like at night, I came up here at night at 2205 and we can see that video. So you can see that this is one of the cameras that was on, and you can see the quality at night. It's not really that good. This obviously, it's dark, but I could see enough to know where the cameras are. So on the left hand side, this is the infrared camera. On the right hand side, that was the low light or low lux camera. But this is all you have to do to be able to scroll back and see, you know, what was going on at certain time periods. It's really that easy. The good thing with these systems is then you can output to AVI or BMP or even print directly from the screen. So if I click on this AVI, I can send this video to an AVI file that I could copy to a thumb drive and hand to the police, or put in a discipline file if I'm disciplining an employee. Yeah, that's easy. So that's all there is to looking at the recorded video. Again, some of the other vendors make it really, really difficult. GeoVision makes it really, really easy. I mean, look, this is how easy it is to go back and scroll through and see what's going on at different times. So that is the configurations on the system itself. That's how to view the recorded video. The final thing that I wanted to show you is to go in and look at the web browser. So if you want to view this video real time from another location, you can do that using a web browser. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go open up Internet Explorer. So this is stock standard Internet Explorer, not any other weird piece of software. I'm then going to go to the loopback address of this server. 127.0.0.1. This basically loops back so that this computer doesn't go on the network. And this will give me the same results as if I use another computer to try to access this one. So the first thing that it's going to ask you is, what do you want to do? Do you want to view live video or do you want to do remote playback? So I'm going to do live video. I'm going to hit OK. Then it's going to say, what do you want to see? Do you want to see one window, so one camera? Do you want to see two cameras, or do you want to do multi-view? So I'll say multi-view. What's the resolution you want to see it at? You hit OK. Then it's going to take a second. It's then going to ask you for the password. And now that you plug the password in, you can now watch your video. So literally, if this DVR was sitting, you know, in the server room, and I was out in my office, I could view this video from inside the building. So I saw that a lot, especially with people trying to supervise employees or in warehouse environments. You would have the warehouse managers sit at their computer and then they can view up to 16 cameras and see what's going on with their facility. This right here, again, there's no software installed. You can get to this through a normal web browser. All you have to do is open up port 80 and forward it, and your person can view that easily. So that's really all there is to it. This is a pretty simple setup. Again, digital video recorders, network video recorders are basically the same type of software. 95% the same. So this is GeoVision. So what you're looking at here right now is GeoVision. There's AverMedia, there's Kodacom, there's Pico, there's all kinds of other different software. 95% the same, 5% different. So so with that, let's go back out to my little studio, and then I'll have some final thoughts for you. So that was the class on digital surveillance system administration. We talked about building and buying your digital surveillance system. Again, you can just go out and buy a pre-made system. You can either buy an appliance where it's all built into one unit, or you can buy a PC-based system that's already created, or you can build your own. So you can just buy a PCI card and the software and build your own surveillance system. The main thing to remember is to make sure that the specifications of the system you buy are the specifications you in fact need. As I've talked about many times, I've repeated again and again and again and again, what I showed you in the demonstration is 95% similar to every other piece of surveillance software you're ever going to use in your life. But it's 5% different than every other piece of surveillance software you're ever going to use in your life. That 5% can either be very important or very meaningless. Again, this is a very equipment-heavy profession, so if you buy the wrong surveillance system and you don't find out till it's installed, again, you can just lose money very quickly. I am all for finding one vendor, and as long as they treat you well, just stick with them. Not simply for troubleshooting's sake, but also for the sales, making sure that you sell the client what the client wants. If you decide to build your system, again, it really is simple. You just need a PC. Whether you build the PC or whether you go to Best Buy and buy the PC. If you're dealing with a digital video recorder, an analog system, you install a PCI card and then you install the software. If you're dealing with an NVR, a network video recorder, then you just install the software. Again, though, with the specifications, as I've talked about, one of the weird quirks, March 15th, 2012, is that device drivers for many of these PCI cards will only work with 32-bit operating systems. So they'll work with XP Home, XP Pro, Vista 32-bit, Windows 7, but 32-bit. The issue with that is if you go to Best Buy, I don't think you can buy any 32-bit operating systems anymore. So if you walk in, you just buy a desktop computer and you got to turn it into a surveillance system, that may not work. So this is something to be careful about. Like I say, even in this day and age, it's really weird that it's a problem, but it is a problem. The next thing is, remember, when you're talking to the clients, expectations management is huge. Make sure you understand what they want and make sure they understand what they're buying. I've dealt with this a lot. I've dealt with a lot of clients over the years. It is always better to have this argument before they've signed the contract than have the argument after the system is installed. If you say from the get-go, your system isn't going to do whatever they say they need, it is much more likely that they are going to give up and say, well, I need the other things that it does, then they'll walk away. A lot of times I've seen salespeople, though, they'll swear that a system does something that it's not going to do. We get to the end of an installation, then the client is bitching, screaming, threats of lawsuits. It's just a horrible thing. So make sure you know what the client needs, the client knows what he's going to get. And again, this is very important for the administration part. So things with recording, things with where cameras are going to go, etc. You're doing what the client asks you to do. We talked about the recording. So with the recording, again, you can either record all the time or motion. I would say only record when motion is detected. Beyond that, you can put a mask on the screen. So you can say, I only want the video to record when motion happens in this specific area. It'll be very important. We talked about remote monitoring, so you can use a normal web browser to access most of these systems. You can view what's going on real time and even recorded video. The important thing with web browsing, though, is for whatever reason, these systems work better with Internet Explorer than with Chrome or Firefox or Safari. Again, these systems use something called an ActiveX control. Internet Explorer is the only internet browser, web browser, that uses ActiveX controls. So this is something. If your client, all they use is Mac computers, they may be able to view their video recorder remotely, but they might not get all the functionality that they want. You can also have remote software installed onto your computer, onto your iPad, onto your iPhone, onto your Mac. The thing is, if the remote software is installed, that software gives you more functionality than simply the web browser. Since it's an installed application, it can do a lot more things. So basically, you install the application on your computer or your device, then it communicates over the network or over the internet to your surveillance system, and then you're able to access it. The final thing we talked about with remote monitoring is you can have these command centers. So you can have different video recorders positioned all over the world or all through a city, and they can all send video back to this one piece of command center software. So most of these video recorders will only support 16 to 32 cameras at the absolute most. If you're in an environment where you need 100 cameras, 200 cameras, 500 cameras, that means you're going to have a stack of these video recorders, and then they're going to have to send their information back to some of this command center software. None of this is a big deal with networking. All you have to understand is how to do port forwarding, how to use firewalls, and then to make sure you have enough bandwidth. Again, this can be a huge thing. If you have a 16 camera system, the boss logs into the system from home, he's going to be pulling that video feed. If they don't have a high enough upload speed, it can grind all the internet connection to a halt. The final thing that we talked about is the basic maintenance and usage of these systems. Again, if you buy a PC-based system, this is in fact a PC. It's Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7. It can get viruses, it can get hacked, etc. So use this just like you would use any other server, a file server or an Active Directory server. All this is for recording video and for remote monitoring. It's not for looking at porn sites, it's not for checking the stock market, it's not for seeing what the weather is going to be tomorrow, and it's not for writing a term paper. All it is used for is video recording. This can be a very big problem, especially since, again, you can use Windows XP to do this. I've had clients of mine, their employees just continuously thrash their video recorder because they were bored at night and decided they were going to surf the web. It really is true. You can lock it down with firewalls, etc. Just make sure that you keep it safe. The administration of these systems is simple. Outlook is probably a little more difficult than administering a surveillance system. There's not a lot to it. You've got the recording functionality. You have every camera has some functionality where you can plug stuff in. Then you have the remote network stuff. It's all pretty simple. Really, if you sat down for a day, you could figure this out on your own. The big thing is, again, all the systems work slightly differently. So if you buy a GeoVision system, it's going to be a little different than an AverMedia system. So make sure you know what you're selling to your client. Make sure you've actually worked with it a little bit, because there's nothing worse than having, quirks come up when you're on the job site. But really, that's all for the class for administering a digital surveillance system. Again, it's pretty simple. As I keep saying with this track, it's very good money. I showed you the GeoVision analog system, but this GeoVision system is like an AverMedia system, which would be like an NVR or network video recorder. If you're dealing with IP cameras, the software is going to look almost identical to what I showed you today. So if you understand what I showed you today, all of this stuff should be pretty simple for you. So as you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy over here for EliTheComputerGuy.com and EverymanIT.com. Today's class was administering digital surveillance systems. I enjoyed teaching it, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one.